So the industry must have, the most important subsidy that they need is loan guarantees. What are loan guarantees? Well, loan guarantees say that if the industry cannot pay back its loan for construction of a new reactor, for some reason they default on the loan. Either they decide not to finish the construction of the reactor, which has happened, because it's more expensive to finish it than it is to just abandon the project. Or they try to produce electricity from a reactor and can't produce it at a price that can be sold on the market to recoup their investment. So they default on the loans. U.S. taxpayers pay that loan back. It's an enormous amount of money. We're talking about $10 billion per reactor. So it's an enormous, enormous amount of money. CBO in 2003 estimated that the industry would default on their loans well over 50% of the time. So this is a very, very, very risky investment. In 2008, CBO, under political pressure, was forced to go back and look at that number. They basically said, well, it's not necessary, that 50% number isn't necessarily accurate now, but they pointed to construction costs, technical risks, licensing delays, and said, and the bottom line is those three things are worse today than they were back in 2003. So it's actually, even though they were kind of being wishy-washy on the 50%, it's actually probably worse than that now. In order to get a loan guarantee, somebody, either the borrower or the taxpayer, has to pay what's called the credit subsidy cost. It's a fee you have to pay. And it's supposed to cover the government's cost of these loan guarantees. The problem is that actually calculating this fee is extremely difficult, because basically you have to guess how much money you're going to need in the bank or in this pot of money when one of these reactors defaults. And so you give them, so the industry wants a 1% fee. So for a $10 billion loan guarantee, they want to pay $100 million. When that project defaults, we're going to be in the hole for almost the entire $10 billion if that much money had already been spent. So it is, the fee question is really, really, really important. And there has been a lot of controversy because DOE has not been willing to tell the public what the fee is. Even though it's the public money that's backing these projects, they won't tell the public how much they've taken in fees, what percentage they have in fees. So we have pursued a FOIA request and still have not gotten this information. We get pages and pages of blanked out information. So it's a really big question. There's a lot of pressure from the Senate, especially to keep this fee as low as possible, because certain utilities are not willing, they're not willing to pay more, and they won't take the loan guarantee. I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. And I already said that the defaults, if they're not covered by the subsidy costs, come directly out of Treasury. They don't go to Congress and have to appropriate the money. It comes directly out of Treasury. It is a blank check. So what's the status of the Title 17 loan guarantee? This program is called Title 17 because that was the title of the bill, the 2005 energy bill that set up this program. Congress has authorized thus far $18.5 billion for nuclear. When that was originally authorized in 2007, they thought it was going to cover 4 projects. The costs for nuclear power have gone up so much in just those past couple of years that it will now only cover 2 projects, or 3 to 4 reactors. So it's the amount of money that they thought that they were actually putting towards this is very insignificant, and yet it's still a huge sum, $18.5 billion. There's also another $4 billion for uranium enrichment. The Department of Energy has offered one loan guarantee to Areva, the French government-owned company, to build a uranium enrichment facility in Idaho, and that project is underway. There's $18.5 billion for all renewable energy and transmission, so all renewables. And I like to point out, because people like to put all renewables in one pot and say, well, they're being covered, it's the same as nuclear, it's fair, and there's parity. The word parity comes up a lot. But the end result is if you flip that around and said, okay, $18.5 billion for just geothermal, and everybody else gets 18.5 too, you'd be shocked, right? That would be not considered fair. So why is it fair for nuclear to get as much as all renewables and transmission together? And then another $8 billion for coal. So that's what's been authorized thus far. President Obama has proposed in last year's 2010 fiscal year budget to increase the nuclear loan guarantees by $36 billion to a total of $54.5 billion. He did not get it last year. He has again requested it in the fiscal year 2011 budget. The nuclear industry, however, 54.5 is only enough to cover 6 to 8 reactors. The nuclear industry wants what they call a permanent financing platform, or at least $100 billion. So 54.5 is not even where the industry is, and that's a lot of money on the line for a 50% default rate. There has been one loan guarantee offered, $8.3 billion for 2 reactors in Georgia. This is a loan guarantee that has already been offered. It was actually announced by President Obama himself, and this is the loan guarantee that we have done a FOIA request on to find out what the subsidy cost fee is, and they still won't tell us. And so we're in court negotiations on that right now. This project, we've signed the dotted line. We're in this loan guarantee for these 2 reactors. The reactor design has yet to be approved, and in fact, just recently new safety issues have been raised for this design. There is no construction and operating license approved from the NRC, so it could be rejected in theory. There is insufficient electricity demand to justify a new reactor, so at what price are they going to be able to sell this electricity at? And then it also has a state ratepayer subsidy, which I'm going to talk about more, called Advanced Cost Recovery, or QUIP. So they're getting subsidies from ratepayers, and now we've also, as taxpayers, signed the dotted line to back up this project. So this project is not something that any person who is fiscally sound would be investing in at this point, especially. But we are, as taxpayers, now fully invested in this project. And as I mentioned, the program is really mired in secrecy. We don't know what the subsidy cost fee is. We don't know what the evaluation criteria is. We have no idea what the environmental impacts, if they've even looked at the environmental impacts of the project. And the Department of Energy refuses to share any significant information from their files. Interestingly enough, Energy Secretary Chu has testified that the Department of Energy will have to reassess this fee based on Fukushima. What does that mean? We don't know what that exactly means, but certainly means that DOE is going to have to look at safety issues, and the risk certainly would go up, increasing the cost of the fee. The next projects in line for loan guarantees look absolutely no better than the one we are now investing in. Calvert Cliffs in Maryland, this Constellation, the utility in Maryland, rejected a $7.5 billion guarantee from the Department of Energy because the fee was loan guarantee from the Department of Energy because the fee was too high. They weren't willing to pay a fee of 11%. So they sold their investment to Électricité de France, which is a French government-owned utility. And now Électricité de France is saying they still want to build this reactor. However, in the United States, you have to have a majority-owned and controlled, any nuclear reactor has to be majority-owned and controlled by a U.S. entity. So EDF cannot go forward without a U.S. partner. They have not been able to find one. Everyone looks at Constellation and says, well, Constellation was the biggest proponent for this reactor, and they pulled out. Why would I jump in now to build the same reactor? And moreover, there was recently a French report saying that the design of this reactor, called the EPR design, is too expensive and too complex. And this is coming from the French government itself. And the French nuclear program is fully owned and controlled by their government, the federal government. So to have this kind of report is very, very damaging, and it shows what kind of problems we're looking at with this reactor design, and this is what we're being asked to invest in. The other 2 projects up for loan guarantees is in South Texas and in Texas. Just as Ben mentioned, NRG Energy, which was the company that was the major U.S. investor, a proponent, developer of the project, pulled out after Fukushima. Why? Because they were working with Toshiba and relying on investment from TEPCO. TEPCO is no way going to be able to invest in this. Also, they were also relying on, they were also hoping for a 50% loan guarantee from the Japanese government. Not going to happen at this point. The Japanese government have enough problems at home. So, Energy pulled out of the project, leaving Toshiba without a U.S. partner, and yet it's still in line for a loan guarantee. South Texas is in the same situation in Calvert Cliffs, which is that they're trying to sell very expensive electricity in a electricity market, where they have to compete against much cheaper electricity, such as natural gas and many, many, many renewables. So the market monitor report for Texas, the ERCOT region in Texas, said that costs for this reactor would exceed revenue, so they would have to spend more than they would get by 33 to 52%. If we signed a loan guarantee, that 33 to 52% would be what we're paying out for this reactor, for these two reactors. The third project that's in line for loan guarantees is VC Summer in South Carolina. The developer is SCG&E, and their credit rating has been downgraded because they're looking at building a reactor. The munis that have invested want out of their 40% investment, and SCG&E is scrambling for other investors. They're actually going to Florida and trying to get munis there to invest in the project, which they have lowballed the cost, so much so that it's laughable. There's no way they can possibly build at the cost they're talking about building. So what are some of the legislative vehicles for actually getting more loan guarantee authority? Well, most important is the fiscal 2012 appropriations process, which is where we are, which is where President Obama's asked for the additional $36 billion. And then we also have additional other subsidies for nuclear, potentially in a Senate energy bill, through either a clean energy standard or, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, or a Clean Energy Deployment Administration, also known as CEDA. And that bill is loan guarantees on steroids. So I'm going to talk more about that. And then also there's potential, though I think post-Fukushima much less likely, for a House energy bill to undermine NRC regulation of the nuclear industry. So in the 2012 appropriations, I've talked about the loan guarantees. They've also, President Obama has also asked for $67 million for licensing small reactors, $30 million for research on small reactors, and $377 million for Generation 4 research and reprocessing R&D. The House subcommittee bill just came out last week and does not include more authority for nuclear loan guarantees. This is definitely along the lines of what you would expect from the Tea Party, but was still somewhat surprising given the rhetoric on the House side for nuclear power, since nuclear will not get built without these loan guarantees. So, but when the rubber hits the road, there wasn't the money to authorize the loan guarantees. It does not cost Congress $36 billion to authorize the loan guarantees. It costs them 1% of $36 billion, or $360 million is all they have to put in there. That's all it costs Congress to authorize $36 billion in loan guarantees. So there's a discrepancy in even how Congress views loan guarantees. They look almost free from Congress's point of view.